Hello everyone and welcome to RS Squared Technology. I am your host Ryan, and today we will be starting into Chapter 2 from the unofficial tutorial series, The Beginner's Guide to SOLIDWORKS 2022 Level 1 by SDC Publications. And as always, I will leave a link in the description so you can follow along if you'd like. So in Chapter 2, there are several parts to be modeled, and in this video, which is going to be Part 1, we are going to start with housing. Now this will be Part 1 just for the housing part, and then as we model the side cover, there will be Part 1, 2, and so on. So with that being said, let's get started with modeling the housing, which starts on page 26, and we'll begin with section 2.1. Now something to keep in mind, if you haven't seen my first video covering chapter 1, I recommend you look at that video so you can get a little bit more familiar with the interface of SOLIDWORKS and also how to create a SOLIDWORKS part document template so that when you jump into this section 2.1 in chapter 2, you'll be able to follow along. Alright everyone, are you ready to get going with the modeling of the housing? I know I am, so let's get to it. We're going to start with section 2.2 on page 28 and go all the way to section 2.13, which ends in the middle of page 43. A brief pause and then we'll go into the extrusion part, starting at 2.14. One thing to keep in mind is I'm not going to go over some of the little detail adjustments that you can make to display features per se. I can make a separate video for you on that, going into the finer details, but as you go along you're going to find that some of these preferences may be different than what I use and or the book uses. Again, there's a couple of different ways to go about things, show things, not show things, etc. So as you progress, you're going to develop the way you kind of want to do things, whether you use an escape key, a right click, using a menu option, etc. As always, I recommend clicking the link in the description below to pick up the book so you can also read those finer details on your own if you'd like. But let's get started here, shall we? Now the first thing also that I'm going to do a little bit different for this part and all preceding parts is I'm going to save and create the part name at the very beginning of the document and tutorial rather than at the end. Why? If the computer happens to shut down for some reason, lose power, I know that I have some saved progress. Or in the event that SOLIDWORKS crashes, I have some saved progress. I would not count on SOLIDWORKS' ability to recover the file. Save and save often. Control S should become your friend. So click Control, press and hold Control and then hit S to save the part. It's going to ask you to save it to a location. I've already done so and I've already titled it housing, so it's not popping up for me. But again, pick a file location, and I recommend you choose one file because you're going to have multiple parts for this assembly. Save them all in the same area. It's going to make life a lot easier. Now, we'll go up here to the top left and choose the Extruded Boss Base command. And then you're going to notice I can't do that Boss Extruded feature yet because I need a sketch. And on top of that, in order to make my sketch, I need to choose a plane in which to make the sketch. So in this case, we're going to choose the top plane, and then you're going to notice that it went from the Features tab over to the Sketch tab. Now from here, we're going to choose the Rectangle command, and then make sure that we are on the corner rectangle selection. Then we're going to come out in the Graphics View area. We're going to click with our awesome number 2 pencil to start the rectangle and click again to finish the rectangle. Now from here, a couple of different ways to close out. We can either choose the Close Dialog check over here in the Properties Manager. I can hit Escape key on the keyboard, or I can right click and choose Select. Pick your poison. In most cases, I'm personally going to use the Escape key. Now, one thing you're going to notice on my screen versus what kind of shows up in the book is that the inside of this rectangle is shaded. So up here on the top in the middle of the sketch toolbar, you're going to see this shaded sketch contours. You can toggle that to whether you want the inside shaded or not. Me personally, I don't like it shaded, so I'm going to make sure that that is off. Now there's another option to turn off the relations icons. You can see here the little green boxes. I would advise to always keep relations visible. Unless you need to do a quick toggle because you have, when you get a busy sketch with lots of lines and curves going everywhere, all of a sudden all these relations are going to start to plague the sketch, and you may need to briefly turn them off to get a sanity check of what's going on. But for the most part, you want to leave your relations on, so you know what's going on with your sketch. So the next thing you're going to also notice is that all of the lines of this rectangle are currently blue, which means it's underdefined. Even though we have 4 relations here for the lines, you'll notice in the bottom right here, not exactly the bottom right corner, but it's going to say underdefined. So we need to add a few more things, relations and dimensions, to make it fully defined. So the next step is we're going to come up here to the line, choose the drop down arrow, choose a center line, and then we're going to come up here to the top left corner node, if you will, and hovering over it with our number 2 pencil, you're going to see that a little circular target-like icon has appeared. That's going to be a coincident relation, and we're going to go down to the bottom right and create another coincident relation. And then you're going to notice that the awesome little number 2 pencil is there. So again, a couple of different ways to close out of your line command is going to be selecting OK twice under the properties, hitting the escape key, or again, right-clicking and choosing select. So this time I'm going to choose to use the check mark over in the properties. Got to do it twice. Again, still underdefined, everything is blue. So the next thing you're going to want to do is make this diagonal line midpoint coincident to the origin. So for this, I will press and hold the Control key on the keyboard, hover over the origin, click it, and then I'm going to hover over the diagonal line until I see this little yellow cube pop up, which is the midpoint of that line. So hover over, click that, and then you can let go of the Control key now, and you're going to see over in the left the properties showed up for these 2 points, and we have the option to add a relation. This is good. This is what we want. We want to center our rectangle based on the midpoint of that diagonal line. So we're going to do so by choosing the coincident relation. And then you're going to see here that 2 additional icons have shown up to show the coincident relation for that line to the origin. From here, you can, in the top left, close the dialog, hit escape if you wish. Still underdefined. We got to add some dimensions to finish this off. So up here in the top left, we're going to choose the smart dimension, and then we're going to do the vertical line first, and the book wants it to be 2.625 inches, and then hit enter, and then we're going to hover over the horizontal line, click it, drag up, click again, and then we're going to enter just simply 6 and press enter, and just like that, we have fully defined this rectangle. We have our dimensions, we have our relations necessary for this sketch to be fully defined. Down here in the bottom, it also says fully defined. So then, again, I'll hit escape to close out of the dimension. And that's going to pause for the moment on page 43, ending section 2.13. Alright, so continuing in section 2.14 on page 43, we're going to now go to the Features tab. We're going to choose a Boss Extrude. And you're going to notice that it flipped the sketch to an isometric view. This may or may not occur depending on where you're starting the Boss Extrude feature from. So now over here in the properties for the boss extrude, we're going to make sure that our end condition is set to blind, even though I like midplane. But you heard nothing for now. Ignore that. It's blind end condition. And then we're going to make a thick part of only 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so it's not that thick. It's more like a protein bar or something. I don't know. Anyways, it's not a protein bar. Then we're going to select OK up here. And look at our beautiful first 3D object. Wow. We went from 2D to 3D. We did a boss extrude feature. Yeah. So, on page 44, section 2.15, they wish to highlight something. So you notice we now have this feature of a boss extrude, and over here in the feature tree, we show a boss extrude. But where did this sketch go, the foundation to this feature? Well, if you look over here in the feature tree, over to the left of the boss extrude feature, there is a little nav arrow that when we click it, drops down, and there it is, sketch 1. That is the foundational sketch we made for this feature. Now the next thing we're going to do is to create another sketch for another boss extrude feature. And what we want to do is make sure that nothing is highlighted, so hit the escape key about like a million times. I dare you to. Just kidding, don't break your keyboard. Calm down. Calm down. This isn't Cookie Clicker. Hit escape a few times. And then we're going to go over here to the sketch tab. And then we're going to choose the drop down arrow to make sure that we select a center rectangle, because the first sketch we did was a corner to corner rectangle, or short corner rectangle. So make sure we have a center rectangle selected. I love this type. You'll see why. Now it's asking, where art thou sketch to be sketched? Yeah, right. It's asking where does the sketch go. It needs to be on a plane, on a face. Well, look at this. We have our first boss extrude, and it has faces. So, page 45, you're going to select the top face, which is going to bring it automatically normal to, which is going to carry us over to page 46/47, section 2.18, and even into section 2.19. So, we have our number 2 pencil. We're going to hover over the origin. We're going to make sure that we have this awesome sauce little yellow relation icon. And we're going to click. We've just created the coincident center point of our rectangle. And now I'm going to slowly drag it out. Why? What do you see different here? There's 2 diagonal construction lines, and this rectangle is pulling apart in a much different way than that corner rectangle was. So now what we're going to do is bring this corner point up here to the horizontal edge of that extrusion. Notice it's going to highlight orange, and on top of that we're getting the yellow relation icon again. You can do it to the bottom edge, horizontal edge as well, but we're going to stick with the top for a little bit of consistency. Then click and hit escape to close out of the rectangle commands key sketch. Then next you're going to notice that our 2 horizontal lines are black. Why? This is going to seem kind of opposite and backwards, but technically our 2 vertical lines here, their dimension is already defined from this one coincident relation point because of all of these other beautiful relations created by these diagonal construction lines here, in addition to these horizontal and vertical relations. Again, that's why I love the center point rectangle, because you get so many more relational constraints created from the get-go, which allows you to do something awesome like this. Now you're thinking, okay, well, the horizontal lines are black, which you'd think that means that they're defined, but they're not. Why? Because if I pick a vertical line, I can still drag from left to right. Arguably, in my X direction, I can go infinite length. So our sketch is still underdefined, which is why On page 47 specifically, the doctor prescribes that we choose a smart dimension and that we choose one of the horizontal lines, do a little bit of a clicky, drag up, do another clicky, and of course, enter for that dimension. Boom! Our sketch is fully defined. Now keep in mind that with this sketch, these vertical lines dimension only changes if we went all the way back to sketch 1, which is the foundational sketch for this other extrusion, and change the vertical dimension there. So this is something to keep in mind when you're designing a part of how you want to build what features first, create what relations, what dimensions, what constraints, and what is driven off of what, so that when you have this final part and you want to change one dimension, you know what it's going to do to the rest of the part. Food for thought, keep that in mind. So we're going to click Close Dialog here, Control S, save it, save often. And now what we're going to do is we're going from page 47 to 48, section 2.2, and into 49, just parking right before section 2.21. We're going to go to the Features tab, Extruded Boss Base, and notice this time it did not flip everything isometric. Don't panic. I'm not going to change the view. I'm going to keep it like this. But what I want you to observe is that the rectangular region has this like rotten banana puke yellow shading inside of it, and this is actually the shading for a partial preview. So keep that in mind. We're going to go over here again, make sure our end condition is still blind, but this time we're going to go for 3.5 inches as again the doctor prescribes in the book. Hit enter. Nothing happened that you can see, at least in this view, but don't panic. Keep your seatbelt on, keep your shorts on, we'll be fine. So, we're going to click OK and hit escape. Still, don't freak out. Oh my god, 2 lines were added, that was it, oh no. Never fear, spacebar is here. Go into an isometric view. Look at that, there's our second extrusion. Bravo, woohoo! So now we'll go into section 2.21, page 49, and begin a new awesome sauce command called fillet. Fun fact, in 2013 when I took my first AutoCAD class and I didn't quite hear what the instructor was saying, I thought they were saying fillet, as in filet mignon. I'm like, interesting, so I was actually mispronouncing it for a while. But I assure you, sadly, it is a fillet. Not to be confused with a nice filet mignon steak. Sad day. So, Features tab, come over here to Fillet, and we're going to click. And then we're going to make sure that we have the constant size fillet checked under fillet type. And now by default, items to fillet is going to be selected. So you can go right into the edges, faces, etc. that you might select for your fillet. Now, on page 50, there are specific corner edges that we are to grab for this fillet. So, we want to grab this one here. Now notice something. Edges highlighted orange. But here's another thing I also want you to consider is you can manipulate the part. It's not like I have to stay strictly in this view to make the selections. I need to make this easy for myself. So if that means zooming in, I want to do so by using our friend, the center scroll wheel on a mouse. That is going to be your friend in being able to zoom in and out really quick and navigate and manipulate and rotate your part really quickly. So for this, again, keep in mind that when I scroll the center wheel towards me, and wherever the mouse pointer is at is where it's going to zoom to. So I'm just going to bring this in a little bit closer. Look at that edge. Looking so epic there. Select it. Partial preview shows that that edge is in fact going to have a fillet. Now I'm going to scroll away for me to zoom back out. And then I'm going to select our other corner edges here of this top extrusion and the bottom extrusion. Just like that. And this one here. Now over here I've only got 6 out of 8 edges that should be selected based on the screenshot on page 50. We're not done. So again, center scroll wheel, but this time press and hold to rotate and manipulate the part. Right there is good. And maybe I'm going to pull the scroll wheel towards me to zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to select this edge. And I'm going to select that edge. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit, scrolling away from me. Then I'm going to hit the space bar. Oops. Now it went into the dimension. So I'm going to hit escape. And now we've closed completely out of the command. It's okay. Don't panic. We're just going to reselect the fillet. Then, again, reselect our corner edges here. Using that center scroll wheel, pressing it in to manipulate the part's position, scrolling in and out, making sure all edges are selected. And now I'm just going to click in the graphics area, hit the space bar, click isometric to bring it back. Again, page 50, we're looking for 2 things. 8 edges should be selected, but not just any 8 edges. The edges from the selection in the screenshot. And we can see here with the partial preview that all of them are selected appropriately. Now down here in the parameters, we're going to want to make sure that symmetric is selected, and then change it to 1/4 inch and hit enter. The partial preview updated accordingly. If your partial preview does not, chances are either the radius condition is too big for the part you're working on, or some other selection has caused the partial previews to disappear altogether. If you select an edge that creates a conflict, well, when you hit OK, it will let you know. So in this case, everything's gravy. We're going to click OK. Control S to save. Save. And there's our first fillet. So I'm going to hit escape to make sure that that first fillet is no longer selected. And now we've gone from page 51, and we're going to go into page 52, section 2.22, which will also carry over into page 53, stopping at section 2.23. So here's what we're going to do. Yet another fillet. But this time we're going to change up our selection to make it a little bit quicker and automated. So select the fillet and make sure we're in the constant size fillet. Again, by default it should be ready to select edge face. And then we're going to select these top faces here. So 1, look at that. Beautiful, fully automated. Selected all these edges for us. And now I'm going to show you something here that gets a little funky with SOLIDWORKS. I'm going to zoom in for this a little bit. You'll notice I'm hovering over this top edge here, and as I get closer to the edge, look at this. It all of a sudden highlights this random line, but it's not there. I don't see no line right there. What it's actually doing is selecting through that face to that bottom edge. So be careful on which you're selecting and what is highlighted. So now going back to just where the face is, you can see all the edges highlighted in orange, and that is what we want. Because if I'm selected, hovering over, if that edge is selected and I click, it's actually going to fill up that edge and not the face that we intend to. Just keep these in mind. This be a little tricky. So click the face, and I'm going to click in the graphics view, press the space bar, bring it isometric just so we're zoomed out and everything's back in view here. And then we're going to click in the dimension, highlight it, choose 0.125, hit enter. Voila! Some additional automated fillet has been done. And then click OK, and Control S as always. So now we're on to section 2.23 on page 53. Alright, section 2.23 on page 53. We're going to go here, press the space bar and make sure that the top view is normal too. Then on page 54, we are going to start the Extrude Cut feature from the Features tab. We'll choose Extrude Cut, but it's going to ask us, well, I need a sketch, and where? So we're going to choose this top plane here, top face. Then we are going to go to the rectangle drop-down menu, choose corner rectangle, and we're going to start our corner rectangle within the edge bounds of this top face here. So click, drag, and click again, and hit escape to clear out. And we are now going to be on section 2.24, which is page 55 to page 56. We are going to now dimension this in a more unique way than what we did on the very first sketch with a corner-to-corner rectangle. So we'll pick any given line to start. I'll choose this vertical line here. I'm going to click the vertical line, and then I'm going to click this vertical edge here, and then I'm going to drag it down and over to the left. Click again, and I'm going to enter 0.375, enter. Now something to keep in mind and be careful of is the selection is this edge of this bounding face here. If I drag down to here and then made that dimension, it's going to make things incorrect. So we need to make sure we're selecting the correct edges of this face here. So next we'll pick this horizontal line and then this horizontal edge. Now obviously in this case there's no other additional edges I could grab, which is good, makes it easy. And the same thing, all the dimensions are going to be the same, 0.375, enter. So now we'll do this vertical line again. So I'll select the vertical line, and here's what I mean. So again, we want this edge right here. If I drag past and grab this edge down here, that's the wrong edge, and while I could grab it and make a dimension, it's not going to make the appropriate wall thickness when we make this cut extrude. So again, grabbing this edge here of this top face, drag it down over to the right, 0.375, enter, and we'll finish off with this top horizontal line and top horizontal edge. Click, drag out, 0.375, enter. Now the next thing we're going to do, which is section 2.25 on page 57, is we're going to add a sketch fillet to the corners of our sketches here. So that's going to start on page 57 and go through page 58. So up here, sketch tab still selected. We are still in the sketch. We're going to choose here the sketch fillet, and then we are going to choose the corners, all 4 of them. And then we're going to make a dimension of 0.15, enter, and then we're going to choose OK, and OK again to close out. Now there's some additional notes on the page for turning on and off the display for our relations, which is right here. View relations, not view. So originally it started with no relations because in one of the prior sketches we turned them off, and now it wants you to turn them on just to see what's going on. We've picked up some new relations where we've got equal relations and we've got tangent relations. Again, this will fully define our sketch here because we've got dimensions and all these relations in place. So, moving on to page 59, section 2.26, we're going to go back to our Features tab. We're going to go back to the Extruded Cut feature, and then we're going to do something unique. We're going to specifically click in the View Orientation in the drop-down, and then we're going to select Isometric. And then over here under the Cut Extrude Parameters, we're going to make sure that the end condition is blind and that we choose a depth of 3.5 inches. And I'm going to press Tab in this case, or Enter. Either one works. And then you're going to notice we have this rotten banana yellow, puke yellow shaded region for the partial preview, as well as these yellow lines showing a partial preview of where it's going to remove material from. And then we have this large arrow here showing the direction, which could be changed from over here. But we're going to leave it facing down, because if we had it pointing up, it'll actually give us an error because it's not even going to be cutting through anything. So then we're going to click OK, and that's going to land us on page 60, where in the middle of the page we're going to do something a little unique here. We're going to rename our feature. So I've got the cut extruded selected in our feature tree. I'm going to click on it once, and it's going to highlight the name. We're going to hit backspace, and then we're going to name it Top Cut. And then hit enter once and hit escape and Control S. And now we're going to move into section 2.27 on page 60, where we're going to do another boss extrude. Alright, section 2.27 on page 60, we're going to do a crazy thing. We're going to simply press the space bar and bring the front plane normal to. And now we'll take it away on section 2.28 on page 61, where we will begin our sketch by going to the Sketch tab and choosing the Circle command. And now we need to choose a plane or face, and in this case I'm going to choose this face of the boss extrude. We're going to go to page 62, where we're going to create a circle by clicking and dragging and clicking again. And then we're going to add some dimensions. So first we're going to click the center of the circle, and then we're going to come up here and choose the top edge, drag out. Then we're going to give it a dimension of 1.875, hit enter. Then we'll click the circle itself, drag out, and we're going to give the diameter dimension 3.25 inches, enter. And then we're going to click OK. And then from here we're going to be on page 63 into 64, where we're going to add a relation to fully define this. Because what's going on? Right now we've got the y and the diameter dimensioned, but we don't have the x. But instead of dimensioning the x, we're going to use a relation. So we'll make sure that our center point of the circle sketch is selected. Press and hold the Control key, hover over the origin, click it, and then over here in the properties, we're going to choose vertical relation. And just like that, we have a fully defined sketch. We love fully defined sketches. So then we're going to come up here, click Close Dialog, and now we're going to enter a new world of how we extrude something. To do this, we're going to actually exit out of the sketch, and this is at the bottom of page 64. We're going to go to the Features tab and make sure that Instant 3D is selected. Now moving on to page 65, we're going into the Options, and then we're going to make sure that we're under the System Options, and we're going to select Spin Box Increments, and make sure that our length increments is set to 0.125 in the English units. And then we'll click OK. Then the next thing I want to do is press the space bar and bring us isometric, and make sure to hover over our circle sketch and click it. And now you're going to notice this little orange arrow here. This is going to allow us to click and drag to create our extrusion. Look at that. Now we want to be precise, so we're going to want to hover over the ruler to make sure that we have a little pointing hand. And you're going to notice that the dimension is in green. So we're going to drag it out until we have, or in this case actually drag it back down to where we have 0.25, and we're going to let go. And then we'll hit escape to see that the extrusion has been made. Woohoo! We got a pepperoni on the side of our box. Control S. So now on page 66, but wait, let's rewind just a little bit. Again, they're now wanting us to name things, which is a good practice, to name all your features and sketches so you know what is related to what. So we're going to click once on the boss extrude to select it, wait a moment, then click again to rename it and delete it, and they want us to choose front boss as the name. So front boss, like a boss. And hit enter. Hit escape a couple times and hit Control S to save your progress. And now here in section 2.32 on page 66, we're going to do an awesome new command called mirroring. Now there's a couple of different mirroring methods, and in this case we're going to mirror this feature. So with that, make sure that you are on the Features tab, and then we're going to come over here into the middle down and select Mirror. Now from here we need to choose in the graphics area the drop down menu for the flyout menu, and we're going to want to choose the front plane, and then we're going to click down in the Features to Mirror area, and then we're going to select the front boss. And then with that, you're now going to go from page 66 all the way to 68, and then we are going to simply select OK and hit Control S, and just like that, this mirror feature has mirrored this front boss on the front plane. Look at that! It's a handy feature to speed things up. So that is going to conclude video 1 for the housing part. We'll pick it up next time in video 2, where we'll continue modeling on this part. So remember that we will be picking it up on section 2.35, which starts on page 69. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening, and I will see you next time.